Welcome to Sigma TV. I am extremely excited to be joined today by Gordon Einstein, Cryptolaw Partners, who's joining us from the US. Gordon, it's a little bit early over there, isn't it?
It is. It's 5 a.m., but I'm so used to working on international time these days, it doesn't throw me off. And I kind of trained myself to get up pretty early. So yes, it is dark outside in sunny Los Angeles. And at some point during this talk, you may or may not see the light change on my face. That is because the dawn is slowly creeping over the hills.
Well, listen, hats off to you because you sound great and you look great for 5 o'clock in the morning. So thank you so much for joining us. Listen, I want to start with a quote of yours. The blockchain and cryptocurrency technology revolution can propel human civilization forward. Our mission is to enable this revolution through law. So let's break this down and start off with when you suggest that blockchain and crypto can revolutionize humanity. My first question is, what's your vision? How do you see this working?
Well, you dove directly into the deep end of the pool, and my respect to you. Okay, so bear with me as I give a slightly extended answer without going too crazy with it. I would consider myself neither old nor young. I'm in an interesting sort of middle age right now. And when I was growing up, and I'll kind of give it away, when I was growing up in the 70s and early 80s, I thought by the time 2020 hit that we would be on Mars, that we'd have true robots, flying cars, life extension, like all this stuff that Elon Musk is saying that we're going to get to reasonably soon, but maybe not so soon, who knows. But it should have been well done by now. And the weird thing is all the movies that were my favorites that were set in the future, the dates that they were set in now have already passed. Like I grew up watching Space 1999. I mean, if you're from the British Isles or the UK, you may know that show or not.
Absolutely.
I grew up. Oh, I love you. Okay. Yes. Space 1999 was one of my favorite shows, when the moon gets blasted out of orbit, and it was just a great show. And Blade Runner is set in 2019, which already passed. And, 2001 A Space Odyssey, that already passed. And these dates that were so unimaginably in the future are now the past. And so we're kind of, we get this weird thing, I guess, as you get older or as you live longer, where you get sort of like, you had your mind vision about what the future was going to look like. You had what actually happened. And what happens to you personally, it's like a midlife crisis. I think humanity is in like a midlife crisis. We should be much further along, and we're not. And it's pissing me off because I want to do this stuff before I croak. I want to go to Mars. Okay, I want to play around with robots and do stuff. I want to be in flying cars, all this stuff. And it's not like, oh gosh, if I had $1 billion, I could do it. It's like, it's not even available for those people. It's like no human is flying to Mars, and something's wrong. And one of the things that got me back into law, I actually stopped practicing for a while, but one of the things that got back into law, and we can go into this in a little bit more depth, is when I saw blockchain and crypto, I saw a way of breaking through some of the systemic constraints that are holding humanity back, and like, come on guys, and picking up the pace. Like, I think crypto picks up the pace of human evolution and makes it even possible that I may get to see some of this good stuff. So I'm just very enthusiastic about it. And, because I have I'm an amateur programmer, but I'm not an expert programmer, but I think I'm a pretty decent attorney. I want to add value where I can. And the place I can add the most value most effectively is through the practice of law. So that's sort of the backstory.
Okay, well, so many things to talk about just in that opening answer.
Yeah.
But coming back to what you were talking about, changing the evolution of humanity and changing the way that we do things. We've been carrying around coins right from the very beginning, from way before even the Roman times. You're talking about cryptocurrency that behaves so differently. Do you really think that this is going to be influential in every single sector of society and create this revolution that you talk about? Every single aspect of a society?
No, I don't. I think people who all they have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay, life is complex, life is evolving, life is multifaceted. Things change. You can never step into the same river twice if you want to be very Buddhist about it. No, of course not. But the way I look at it is we're always, as humans, as groups, as humanity, we're always slamming up against systemic constraints, plural, multiple systemic constraints. And as we solve them, we move forward, and a new systemic constraint arises and holds us back. And the glory of humanity, if you like, lies in overcoming those systemic constraints and moving forward. Vaccinating against measles. Measles was, in its way, systemic constraint. The food supply, the Malthusian trap, that we couldn't possibly have enough food to feed people. That's a systemic constraint that we got through with the Green Revolution. The AI is a huge enabler and also systemic constraint. It can possibly kill us, but it can also propel us to evolve ourselves. So no, blockchain and crypto is not the answer to everything. But I also want to tease out something you said earlier, which is, let's take that coin comment a little bit deeper. Yes, for the vast portion of human existence, coins were the currency. But you know what? They're not now. Right now we have fiat. The amount of coin in actual circulation is minimal, and they're saved for the smallest denominations. Okay, if you want to get to an actual dollar or euro in multiple amounts, you're not using coins, you're using paper. Sometimes, and most of the time, you're using electronic, right? To actually go back to Bitcoin and relate crypto is, in fact, going back to coins when we had this aberration for a while into fiat that I think is causing some real headache and hangovers. I think the whole debt, there's no way that we'd have this global debt bomb if we were actually using physical coins, physical precious metals, but those aren't reasonable to use in 2020. We're not going to be carrying around, Krugerrands all day. So we're kind of taking the best of what happened before, moving past this aberration of fiat and getting back to coins. And let me tease that out a moment more. People who are in the ex-Soviet space, and I go there a lot, and my wife is Russian, and it's just, I'm very fascinated with Russian history and culture, and I mean Russian Empire larger space, like including Ukraine and the Baltics and everywhere else. They're not Russian, but just that geographical space. They look at the period between 1917 and the revolution as sort of a cul-de-sac of history that they're now having to back out of and get back on track and catch up with the other countries of the world. Well, I think fiat was like a cul-de-sac of history that the world, I said America because America kind of, is like the primary abuser of the system, had to back out of in order to go back on the main track of where humanity was supposed to go. So do I think blockchain and crypto solve everything? No. Do they address some fantastically significant issues? Yes. And also, as they address those issues, they allow us to put more energy towards other unrelated systemic constraints where we haven't been able to focus on them and focus on those. So I guess that's a little bit more of a nuanced answer.
But we're still talking about something that sounds like or looks like a revolution, which is, powerful, incredibly powerful. To come on to more of your role within that, I'm trying to see how does your role in law play into the success of this changing of the way that we work, the dropping of this systemic framework, essentially, of this revolution?
Great question. So when I got involved in Bitcoin and crypto really by happenstance, and that's a story for another day. But there I was in Kiev at a conference listening to this stuff, half in Russian, half in English. And I didn't really understand it because I was not at that time, I stopped practicing law and I was working on my own company. I was there sort of just for fun with some friends. But I started listening to this, and I had two major epiphanies that rocked my world and actually made me go back into law, which is something a lawyer almost never does. Like most lawyers try to get out of law, to actually go back in law is like checking yourself back into prison from a lot of their perspectives. So I'm so sorry to hear that. It's just reality, but I love it now. I'm happy. So I had two interwoven epiphanies. The first one was, they kind of stacked. The first one was, wow, Bitcoin and blockchain are awesome, but they need law. Now, what do I mean when I say that? I mean that, Bitcoin doesn't care, in a weird way, Bitcoin doesn't care what we think. Bitcoin just is Bitcoin and just operates. It's kind of the magic of decentralization and this collective intelligence that's formed by the Bitcoin market. But to the extent that companies and startups and even open source projects are creating things, and there's humans behind those things, I realize they need legal work. They need help. They need to set up the right kind of organizations. They need to protect their intellectual property. If they want to not protect their intellectual property, that has to be an informed choice because there's a certain way to do that. And it's one thing when you're a bunch of nerds trading magic internet money, but once you're trying to get serious and you're dealing with regulators and everyone else, you need someone like me to step in there as a shield to because the point I always make is, as neat as your blockchain or crypto startup is, it's a startup. Okay, and startups have certain legal requirements. Form the entity, choose your jurisdiction, compensate your people, protect your intellectual property, all that stuff. So I realized it needed law. Now, the secondary, it's like what I think slightly deeper thought is, it's not just that it needs law, but law needs it. Law needs, not the reverse, law needs crypto and blockchain. And what do I mean by that? The things that I found, like the way law is practiced is one of the systemic constraints on humanity. The fact that we have all these different countries with all their different laws that don't match, that are not clear, that conflict with each other, that allow for human language of vagueness. I mean, just and it goes deeper than that. Like you're lucky, I guess, in the EU that you have a growing body of community law. And so you can, for the most part, you can be in Estonia or Portugal and the same law applies. Now, some people don't like that, and that caused Brexit. But in terms of just pure efficiency, even if the law is bad, the fact that the law is consistent produces a little bit of efficiency. Imagine if you have good law that's equally applied over a wide geographical space. That's kind of neat. Okay, now look at the United States, and I try to match having a global perspective, but also, really like, I like being an American, but it's not like, yeah, America. It's like I try to look around the world and see how other people are doing things. Here we have a continental-sized power, okay, that should be just, pardon my French, kicking butt every second of the day. But we're systemically hobbled by the fact that we have 50 states and federalism, and those 50 states, I mean, there's a reason for it, and the reason was valid at the time. But if you look, for example, at money transmitter law, 50 states, actually 49 states with money transmitter law, and you're trying to figure out how to work through the system and qualify with each state regulator, it's ridiculous. And the United States is sacrificing its biggest strategic advantage, which is a common strategic, economic, and legal space that's continent in size. I mean, we're not the size of the Netherlands. I love the Netherlands, but we're huge. We should have common law. We should have one law also. But there's no way you can get those state regulators to give up their power. It was a battle of the century and took the Great Depression to give up their power on securities law. So I see blockchain and crypto as a way of doing an end run around all this, and even going for the bigger play, which is creating, for the first time ever, true global private law. And if that happens, that will remove a huge systemic constraint on the world, just like moving to a single currency would remove a huge systemic constraint on humanity.
Well, listen, I'm absolutely loving hearing about this and looking forward to talking to you more about this more in depth. And today we're taking the opportunity to get to know you, Gordon, and find out what you do. Now, you mentioned a number of things I just want to come back to. Of course, you mentioned how things are regulated in the US. No, I think everybody on the planet right now has a fair idea of the difference between states within the US, having been glued to the television over recent weeks with, of course, the election. Yes. But bringing that back to something that you said right at the very beginning, which was about your vision and our vision as we had in the 70s and the 80s, looking forward to Blade Runner and how we anticipated life being. Now, I can remember when there was a television show that was showing this small disc that could hold all of your music, and it was going to be revolutionary, and of course it did. It played a huge role in bringing the music industry forward. Now, is this what we're going to see with the way that blockchain and cryptocurrencies are operating at the moment? Is this just a step in what we're going to have in the future? And what do you think that future is going to look like?
Well, it's funny. Yes, I remember. One day you'll be able to hold 1,000 songs on this, platter. It's like, whoa. I know. It's kind of fun looking back at like AT&T commercials from the 90s and seeing their prediction of the future, and it's, they're actually not that bad. It's oh gosh. I think blockchain and crypto, it's a great question. Fantastic question, actually. I think in some ways, if we do it right, it's going to become like electricity. It's just going to be a given. And I just had this conversation with someone. It's like, arguing about this or that crypto because they're both on blockchain. It's like comparing a toaster to a Tesla. Okay, they both run on electricity, but they're functionally different, and you shouldn't get too caught up on the fact they both run on electricity. You really want to look at everything for what it is. I think, blockchain and blockchain tech is evolving and morphing very rapidly since Bitcoin. It's not your grandfather's or grandmother's blockchain anymore. And I think right now we're in battles like, with electricity in the United States, we have, alternate AC and DC, alternating current and direct current. And there used to be this big debate about whether we can go AC or DC, and now we're all in AC. I think to some extent we're going to have sets of standards, and those sets of standards are going to take place in the background where we as front-facing people won't have to deal with them anymore. Just like we don't have to deal with what kind of electricity we're using unless we kind of go between countries, which is interesting if you're an American. We don't have to worry about internet protocols. I mean, I'm talking to you on Zoom. I guess I have some conceptual idea how this works, but I'm not deep into like TCP IP and watching the packets and all that stuff. Hopefully it becomes like that. Now, I guess I also want to point out that, because we move into the future so gradually, one day per day, we get used to it. It becomes normal very quickly. So it always feels like the future's out there and never in the present, even though someone maybe looking at today from 20 years ago be like, wow, this is amazing, but somehow I don't think so. This isn't quite so wow, and this isn't quite so amazing as probably it could have been. Now I'm not some downer Debbie. It's like, the world's still here. We're all alive. Life is reasonably good. We can still fly places, COVID notwithstanding. But I still think we could have been further along. So what does the future look like? If we break through these systemic constraints, we may. Well, here's one thing. We may be able to realize much higher investment returns on our investments. And I don't mean that just in a sort of crass money-making way. But when we build things, when we build projects, when we build companies, when we accomplish things, I think the amount of benefit that we reap from those accomplishments may go up because far less of it will be sucked away by legal, by tax, by the difficulty of spreading something out from your primary market. I mean, if when you release something, it's instantly global, that saves time and that saves money and that produces more benefits that you can quickly reinvest and you get this compounding effect. So my hope is that things do two things. They move better, like to a better place, and they move faster towards that better place. And I think that's moderately realistic in the middle term. I don't think it's immediate. But that's what I'm working towards, and I know you good folks in Malta are working towards that also. Very visionary jurisdiction. I love Malta, by the way, so I'll just throw that in there as a little plug.
You can come over when this COVID is all over. Come and join us over here.
I miss Malta so much, you have no idea. It's like the AIBC and the Malta Summit and Emma, and now I get to meet you. It's like it is a great place, and some of my best memories are just like looking over the Mediterranean, having some chilled rosé with some friends, eating shellfish and talking about crypto. It's like, oh my God, get me back to heaven. Because right now I'm in Studio City, California. So, and actually you and I will have single malt whiskey, but yes.
Gordon, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we've just opened a box of amazing topics to talk about and to really delve into. So I'd love to catch up with you again and to talk about that a little bit in more detail. Thank you so much for joining us at 5 a.m. in the morning. You look great.
Well, you know what? I'll take the compliments. I appreciate it. It's tea and, and the cats woke me up. But, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Great questions, great discussion. I think I already mentioned 20 times, but I miss Malta. So yes, let's do it again. Virtually or, as soon as I can fly over there, I will.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much from Sigma TV. Look forward to talking to you very soon.